Hello, everyone. This is our Challenges and Opportunities project, and we decided to discuss discipline. I'm Amy Daigle, and this is Murphy Post.
Hey, so the school I work at currently is Lau Creek Elementary. Lau Creek has a pre-K class, and we actually go through sixth grade in Catawba County. Our middle schools are seventh, eighth, so elementary school is pre-K through sixth. We have about 515 students. We are in a rural area. We have approximately 65% free and reduced lunch, and actually the whole feeder has universal breakfast. Um, we also have three self-contained classrooms that have different levels of severity. Basically, Lau Creek houses the adapted curriculum students for the entire feeder. We have two EC buses that come to our school. Classes are not leveled except for AIG. AIG kicks in the fifth and sixth grade, so they have some leveled classes and rotations. Teachers do have input on the class rosters, but not the final decisions. And lastly, some of the common discipline issues that we face are disrespect, insubordination towards staff, and then obviously with the self-contained classes, there's going to be some behavior issues just as a part of that. Most of our discipline issues, to be quite honest, are males.
Okay, and I work at East Alexander Middle School as the assistant principal now. Our middle school's in Alexander County, which is the county beside Murphy's, Catawba County. Ours is 6 through 8. We have roughly 620 students, and that's coming from 4 feeder elementary schools. We're also in a very rural area. We're a little less than Lau Creek at a roughly 58% free and reduced lunch. We do have one completely isolated OCS class. The rest of our special needs population is dispersed throughout. We have a few resource classes. Actually, we have one in the sixth grade and one in the seventh grade, but currently didn't need one in the eighth grade. We do, however, have an EC teacher designated for each of those grades. So we have 3 EC teachers on staff full time. Our teachers chose not to do leveling a couple years ago, felt like it caused more issues than it was worth, and they have worked in ways to do differentiation within their course, or since we have the resource classes, that helps with the differentiation piece there as well. Our discipline issues really focus mainly on the bus. So far this year, I think we've had 31 discipline referrals, and something like 82% of those are based on bus behavior. All of the things are really small. I hate to even call them fights. Most of them are more like horseplay that gets a little too out of hand, and then verbal altercations. We have a few skipping class, and then just insubordination and disrespect to teachers.
So Kowalski talks in the book about discipline, a couple of things that we kind of want to relate to. Both Lau Creek and East Alexander have a focus on PBIS. And so Kowalski doesn't directly reference PBIS, but he talks about the idea on page 150. He says, in addition to eliminating problem behavior, school personnel should teach positive social behaviors such as respecting the rights of others, self-control, and resolving conflict fairly. Also, Lau Creek and East Alexander both believe that parent contact and communication is really important. East Alexander is further along with both the parent contact and with the PBIS, so it's sort of a cool compare and contrast. But Kowalski says parents need to be informed as soon as possible when disciplinary action is deemed necessary and involved in efforts to prevent the behavior from recurring.
On that note, just a little bit of the discipline information comparison between East Alexander and Lau Creek. As Murphy said, East Alexander is already implementing the PBIS model. We've been very successful with it. I believe we're on the second year. Technically, I guess we've started our third year of this, but just to give you an idea, this is our PBIS SOAR model. So in other words, we chose the acronym SOAR. Students show respect, they obey rules. See if it'll scroll down here. Accept responsibility and rise to excellence. And if you look across the top of this matrix, it shows you all of the locations with which we have designated this SOAR matrix for. So in other words, we have designated expectations in the classroom, we have designated expectations on the bus or in the gym. There's a few more we're looking at adding for next year. For example, our school is 1-to-1 with Chromebooks, so we're looking at adding Chromebooks next year. But that's just a basic layout of our sewer. If you walk around our buildings in the school, you'll see, for example, in the hallways, you'll see several posters that only have the hallway one on them instead of kind of squishing it into one. But this one, figured we'd look at one instead of everything. To go back to our presentation here, the model that we're using right now is supposed to help us reduce our number of office discipline referrals. If you look at our comparisons coming from 2015, 16, 16, 17, and 17, 18, you can see that we have significantly reduced our issues on the classroom, both in the bus. We have reduced our office referrals by 247 in the last 3 years. And just in general, we're on that downward trend. Our goal is to reduce it yet even more this next year.
So with Lau Creek, I'm a part of the behavioral team along with the guidance counselor and several teachers. But we've completed a rough draft of our PBIS matrix and our PBIS plan. But it's new to the school this year. Some of the staff went to training, but for example, I got hired after the training occurred. So a lot of us are a little bit behind on the professional development side of PBIS. We have a rough draft matrix, but we've sent it to sort of our district coordinator, and we've also sent it to our coordinator for the Leader in Me, which is the character education program that we focus on, the 7 habits. We've also tied it in as an action team as part of the Leader in Me, to where we incorporate PBIS along with that program. As I referenced before, males account for the vast majority of discipline problems across all the grade levels. We have behavioral plans that are on file for many of the students that are in self-contained classrooms. All staff in those classrooms are CPI certified, and it's typical that administration gets called to one of those classrooms multiple times per day. And finally, this year, student handbooks were printed and sent home again. It had been since 2015, 2016 that had just been posted online, so it wasn't a sure thing that parents got a copy of it. This year, we decided to print those copies.
As Murphy was saying, he notices a trend in males being a part of their discipline problem. At East Alexander Middle School, we utilize a program called ABE, or Scholarship is the company that makes it. And yes, that is a C, not an S. It is Scholarship. This program allows us to input all of our office referrals as well as classroom incidences, and then it allows us to accept the data from that. I didn't pull any data and put it in here because it's very difficult, at least initially, to remove student names. With ABE, as well as our discipline matrix, which I'll just click on very quickly, allows us to be consistent, and then allows us to then track that data with our consistency. So this is just a shortened version of our discipline code. I just simply wanted to show that we have specific outlined levels and whatnot. So in other words, anytime there's an issue in the classroom that falls under this category, the teachers are inputting it into ABE as just a classroom level, and it's something that I, as an administrator, don't deal with until the student gets to their 6th level. But here's the consequences for those things. After those levels, you can see that I take over with office referrals. And then, of course, we have Category 2 and Category 3 offenses, which are a little more as you can see, a little worse as far as the offense goes, and we deal with that directly. Part of that is to kind of help keep some of our discipline in the classroom and allow the teachers to work with the things that they need to develop that relationship with the students about. As our teachers were assessed on the teacher working conditions survey, and they had been using this AID program and this discipline matrix now for a couple of years, we've seen some significant data increase. So for example, we had 31.8% increase simply in the fact that our student conduct was being managed more appropriately. And then we also had down here, I don't know if I can get to it, another 11.9 increase there.
As far as Lau Creek, Catawba County's board policy for elementary discipline is not very detailed. So a lot of the consequences are left at the school level for behavior, and it's sort of up to the discretion of each school's administration to determine consequences. A lot of the things that we use at our level are lunch detentions, after school detention, in school suspension. But one of the things that my principal and I are trying to do in our first year together is try to make adjustments to sort of streamline discipline, improve consistency across the board. So we're kind of working towards what East Alexander already has in place as far as their discipline and consequences. Now, we don't have ABE, but we have something kind of similar called Educator's Handbook. This is the first year that Catawba County has used the Educator's Handbook. Basically works with minors and majors, and we're kind of working through that with our staff as the year goes on.
So opportunities to improve discipline. If we look back, we're looking at staff development to help our teachers understand the issues that our students are struggling with that would affect their ability to engage and to learn. Things like abuse and neglect. I just feel like if we have more professional development on those things, that the teachers will be better equipped to handle the classroom outbursts. Of course, parent phone call contacts. Murphy touched on that earlier. We feel that anytime you speak with a student regarding behavior, no matter how minor it is, that a parent needs to be contacted for it. With ABE, some of those things will be automatically generated and you can send home an email if you want. But for example, if a student comes to my office for any reason, we do contact the parents immediately. And lastly, the discipline matrix. Is certainly something important for us to make sure that we are consistent. As you can imagine, it doesn't take long for something to pass throughout a community. If you handle one situation one way and then you handle another similar situation a different way, that spreads throughout the community, and that discipline matrix helps us avoid that issue.
So as far as Laurel Creek, I referenced we're working on a discipline matrix for our school with input from the PBIS team to provide consistent discipline. Um, we would like for our teachers to make more parent phone contacts, like Amy mentioned. Teachers have got to call a parent if they put something in handbook as a minor, and we would much rather than prefer. We would much prefer our teachers to call than send a note home or an email. We want to make contact logs mandatory for staff members with an average of 2 contacts per day, ideally more positive than negative. We would reward that staff behavior with a duty-free lunch or something comparable. And then lastly, staff development is necessary for our staff as well. I mentioned that a lot of us have not had the PBIS training. And also we've got DSS is coming in to do a poverty simulation with our staff in November, because a lot of our staff, don't know that they understand a lot of this behavior is rooted in poverty, and trying to give our staff the tools that are the tools necessary to deal with that.
Here are our references for the sources that we use, primarily the North Carolina Teacher Working Conditions Survey, as well as the Kolowski textbook. We hope you enjoyed our presentation on discipline, and if you have any questions, just leave a comment on the discussion page. Thanks.
Thanks.